This is day number 2 on the Pythagorean Theorem, chapter 7, section 3. So let's take a look at our problem here. So what we have to remember about the Pythagorean Theorem is that we're dealing with right triangles. And so what we're looking for is to make a right triangle. The sides connected by the right triangle are going to be your A and your B term. Those are our legs of the right triangle. The side opposite is going to be the longest side, called the hypotenuse. And so what we saw yesterday was that if we took the two legs, the square of those two is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. So the size of the square that we end up making by squaring or finding the length or that actual area, and here I'll sketch it out for you again. Looks kind of like this. If we took this side right here and we made a square out of it, the area of this squared, a squared, and the area of this square here, b squared, ends up equaling the area of this square here, this larger one, of c squared. And so we're going to use that to help us find out these different problems. So here we've got a right triangle where it says that the guy wire attached to a 24-foot pole above the ground. So it's 24 feet above the ground. So from this point down to here is 24 feet. And it says that it needs to support this telephone line, and it says that we're going to find the length of the wire needed. So that we want to find this guy wire, the length of this, if the guy wire is to be attached or meet the ground 10 feet from the base of the pole. So from this point to this point is going to end up being 10 feet. So what we've got is a right triangle. You can actually see it right in here. So there's my right triangle. And we're trying to find the side opposite the right angle. That's your C term. So the guy wire is the C value. So we're going to take our formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and we substitute. So we've got 24 squared plus 10 squared is going to end up equaling c squared. So 24 squared makes 576. 10 squared is 100, and when we go ahead and add those together, hey, we get a perfect square, 676. So when I take the square root of both sides to cancel out the squared symbol, I'm left with 26. So 26 feet is the length of the guy wire. So let's take a look at another problem here. On this one it says you are playing a game. You're playing Capture the Flag, and you are 50 yards north and 20 yards east. So when you have one of these problems that are talking about north, south, east, west, just draw a little diagram of what's going on. And so here at 50 yards north, so you are going 50 yards north and 20 yards east. So right there is where you're at. And so then it says that the other team's base is 80 yards north and 60 yards east of your base. So 80 yards north and 60 yards east of your base. How far are you from your other team's base? And so this is where you are. This is your other team's base. They just mentioned those coordinates, and we're trying to find out what that length is. So basically what you're doing is you are subtracting out, you're trying to draw that right angle and then think about what those units are. So the way they got 30 is they took the y values, and so the y values were 80. So this was the 80 yards north here, and they subtracted the amount that you were from your base, 50 yards, and that's where they're getting the 30 yards. So the 40 yards, this is coming from the x components. The x components are the east components down here. And so what they did is they took the yards east, 60 yards east, that's what their base was, and they ended up subtracting the 20 yards, and that's how they're getting 40. And then they go ahead and set up the Pythagorean theorem. So the two sides connected by the right angle symbol are your a and b terms. So 30 squared plus 40 squared equals c squared. And so we go ahead and set that equal to c squared since we're looking for that. So this makes 900 plus 1600 ends up equaling c squared. We add that together, we get 2500 equals c squared. So we take the square root of both sides, and that's going to cancel out the squared symbol, and we're left with 50. And that's going to end up being the length you are, the distance you are from your opponent's base. So 50 yards is what we'll say here. So there's another problem that's very similar to that, so let's take a look at it. So it says you and your friend are standing back to back. Okay, so here's where you're standing. Now this is you, and you're going to be heading out in one direction. It says you run 20 feet forward and 15 to your right. So we go 20 feet forward, so I'd label that 20 feet, and then you turn right and you go 15 feet. Alright, so at the same time, your friend runs 16 feet. So you were back to back, so they run 16 feet forward. So forward's not the same direction. That means because you were back to back, so forward for your friend is going to be going this way. And so that was 16. And then 12 feet to her right. Okay, her right means the opposite direction from your right. So she's going to end up going this way. You can actually face that kind of opposite of this and see that this would be to her right. And so that's just 12 feet. And so they want to know, she stops and hits you with a snowball. How far does your friend throw the snowball? Okay, so this is where she is. This is where you are, and she throws that snowball, and this is the distance she had to throw it right there. And so what is that? Well, we're not quite sure unless we set up a triangle. So let's do that. So I'm going to set up this right triangle. We need to find out what this distance is. Well, last time we had to subtract because we went out a certain distance from our base. Well, here we're adding these two, 16 and 20. So 16 plus 20 is going to give us this length. And this length is going to end up being 36. And then we're going to find out the distance across. So this distance right here is what we need to find. Well, I know one part is 15 and this part is 12. So I have to do 12 plus 15, and that gives me 27. So now I know my two numbers. I can go ahead and set up my Pythagorean theorem. So the right angle symbol is right in here. So it's the 27, 36 are my two legs. So I've got a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we're going to do 36 squared plus 27 squared equals c squared. So 36 squared ends up being 1,296. 27 squared should be an odd number, and it is 729 equals c squared. And so we go ahead and add those, and we get 2025 equals c squared. So whenever a number ends in 5, if it's a perfect square, it's going to, the answer is going to end in 5, and it certainly does in this case. So when we go ahead and take the square root of both sides to cancel out the squared symbol, we're left with 45. So 45 equals c. And let's go back to the units. Looks like feet are the units. So 45 feet, that's a good throw with a snowball at least. So 45 feet is the answer. Well, those are the problems that you're going to see on tonight's homework. Good luck.